on how you see yourself in your world.
Or something that would happen in Adelaide.
I wonder if all those people in the freezer have been told that their names are there.
Well, that's...
But just seriously for a moment. Actually, in my experience, politicians tend to...
Thanks for bringing us back down to earth, Charles.
Yeah, no, tend to keep their enemies on speed dial. Like, it's actually the people that you keep closest. Like, I was looking at Joel's phone before, and you should see the people on his speed dial. It's all his enemies. It's all his caucus.
Amazing.
Kate Crawford, do associate professors have enemies? Professors, for example?
Oh, the academy. Everyone is friends. No one's ever fighting in the academy. Come now. No. We do it much simpler. We just stab each other in the back in journal articles. It's very effective. And then we have these little collections of voodoo dolls that we like to have of, you know, the various sort of executive powers. No, I think this is actually one of those particularly political issues of having to really track your enemies. And unfortunately, in the case of Belinda, I think the number is increasing rapidly in this particular week.
All right, we've got another question up in our audience at the back there. We'll take the gentleman with his hand up at the back. No, sorry, wrong one. I beg your pardon. Over there.
Yeah, I think that hasn't been addressed is this could be a big problem for the government, considering even though she's a backbencher, she got drunk while the government's trying to combat this whole binge drinking culture in Australia. I think that would come back to really hit the government, and I was wondering if the Liberals are going to try and attack the government for that sort of issue.
Yes, well, Joel Fitzgibbon, I mean, I don't suppose binge drinking was involved in this case, but you might like to take that.
Well, I'm not Belinda Neal's lawyer, Tony, but I come back to the basic point. Was Belinda Neal drunk? We were talking about the power of the media, and you come to the conclusion she was drunk because the media said she was drunk. I don't know whether she was drunk or not, but if she was, then that would be no, Charles, because on a backbencher salary she could never afford them. But you know, if she was drunk, that's an inconsistent message from the government. That would be bad for the government.
It wasn't just the media, though. There were reports from the staff. That's the whole point. If there were 6 reports from the staff, why would 6 staffers lie about it?
Exactly.
Well, these are now subject to a police investigation, Tony. I think we better be careful about what we say.
Don't stand it away like that. I mean, there's a serious point this man is making, and that is 6 members of the staff, with no motive to do so, spontaneously produce statutory declarations making a serious complaint. And I think really you do a disservice to your own government to try and trivialise this.
I agree, Tony. There was
was
obviously sufficient activity at that club that night to cause the Prime Minister to become sufficiently concerned to issue a statement. And I accept that. But let us not come to all these conclusions before she's had her, if you like, day in court, particularly when so much of this information is coming from the media. 5 days, as Kate said, 5 days in a row now. It's pretty tough.
And tonight as well. I'm going to draw a line under it now. Remember that QandA... Q&A is live from 9:30 in the eastern states, and you can put your questions via our website or by SMS. Simply text your name, location and question to the number on your screen, 197 55 222. Thanks for all of the questions you've been sending. We can't ask them all, of course, but each week we put together a sample of what you've been asking. And you'll find last week's measure of what's on your minds on our website at abc.net.au/Q&A. Let's go back now to tonight's issues. Our next question comes from Matthew Tukari in the audience.
My question is I'll ask a question in a minute, but I just want to say I agree with Charles on the question of Belinda Neal. I want my politicians to be human. OK, she's probably been bad, and John Delabosca's probably been bad, but I also want to know that they're like me, so I can vote for them, whether they're Liberal or Labor. And I think 5 days in the press, I'd like to hear something about education and health and Indigenous affairs and all sorts of other things than whether or not she did or didn't.
OK.
My question...
And indeed your question.
My question, is it time that women were allowed to serve on the front line? And by front line, I mean in physical combat roles in our Defence Forces, especially given that our recruitment and retention rates are starting to drop and have been for a long time. Is it time we bit the bullet, not literally, but engaged more women actively in our Defence Forces?
Let's hear from a woman, Pru Goward.
Well, as Commissioner, that was quite a big issue, and in the end, I concluded that it was going to be a matter of time and the community was not comfortable altogether with it, but that if you had women of a certain strength and a certain capacity, then why not? That you shouldn't be judged for the front line on the basis of your gender, but on the basis of your abilities to perform that role. And I'm sure that that's where we'll get to. The other issue I noticed was that because women so rarely have frontline combat duties, they don't get considered for promotion up into the senior ranks of the service, and no wonder so many of them drop out.
Kate Crawford, oh sorry, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
You were finished? Kate Crawford.
Well, look, I think it's absolutely one of those issues where equity is involved. If women wish to fight in the front lines, I think that should be absolutely their choice. But I think there's a bigger issue here, which is about the culture of actually joining the military. And at the moment, it's a very masculine culture. And unfortunately, there are some really nasty incidents of women having to go through processes where they're being humiliated at work simply because they want to be part of defending their country. So in actual fact, I think we have to look much more closely at that kind of very male culture of the military before we can start saying that this is a level playing field, because at the moment it simply isn't.
Charles Firth.
Well, I don't think anyone should join the military. Yeah. We'd save, what, $16, $17 billion a year. You could divert that into education. And how come all our questions tonight are from, you know, people, feminists and things? Have you stacked... Oh, this is the ABC, that's right. No, but I think actually Pru brought up the serious point, which is that the officer classes are stacked out with men at the moment. And I reckon part of that is about recruitment of women into the sort of lower ranks of the military, but actually the officer classes come from a stream from day one nowadays through ADFA and stuff like that. And that's where you've got to actually look for gender equity. I mean, Joel, that's what you should be going and doing tomorrow morning, is getting some quotas in there, like the ALP.
Always happy to follow your advice, Charles. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. On a serious note, Joel Fitzgibbon, give us your view of the actual question. I mean, should women serve in frontline roles in combat?
Well, it's a very serious question, Tony, and hopefully the audience will know I've been very active in this area in the relatively short time I've been the Defence Minister. I mean, only 13% of the permanent Australian Defence Force are women, and the number's been stagnant for about a decade.
It's actually declined.
And we've been looking at ways of addressing that. Now, part of the problem is cultural, as Pru has identified. One of the barriers, in my view, is the inability of women to progress all the way through the ranks. I say we're restricting our talent pool here by sending a subliminal message to women that while they could become the CEO of a major bank, they can never become the CEO of the Australian Defence Force. And I think that does restrict our pool. So we've got to do much better, and we're now working up some programs to deal with it. But yes, in the minds of some women, the inability to go all the way to the front line could be a barrier to their decision to join the Defence Force.
Well, let me ask you the obvious question then. Could you imagine, in your time as Minister, women serving in frontline combat roles in Afghanistan?
Well, the reality here is that we do discriminate, in a sense, against women by excluding them from some frontline positions. It's changing. We're bringing down some of those barriers. I'd much rather see us discriminate on the basis of physical ability than on gender.
Well, can you join the SAS, for example, if you're a woman?
No, you can't. And, you know, some people would argue it shouldn't be on gender. If a woman has the ability to be just as fast and as strong and as agile as a man applying for the same position, then arguably she should be allowed to do that position. But this is a debate that runs deep in the Defence Forces, of course. And you get all sorts of spurious arguments as to why women shouldn't be performing these roles, but there's some pretty good arguments from time to time as well.
OK, you ask the question, so you get to have a response, and then we'll go up to the back.
Sure. The follow-up question is, do you think it's not a case of what happens within the military, but public perception that we're not prepared yet to see women die in combat? Is it more about what the public think as opposed to what we should be doing and as a matter of public policy, just following through in making senior appointments in senior ranks?
I like to think that the people who put up most opposition to women fighting in the front line are people concerned both about the safety of women and the safety of the people she would serve next to. And there are some fairly valid arguments, but I don't think we can afford to hide behind them.
What are the valid arguments?
There's quite a lot of evidence about women serving next to men in frontline roles that...
Would it be distracting?
No,